Hello, good morning. So today I want to do a video comparing and contrasting introverted intuition versus extroverted intuition, or abbreviated NI and NE. So introverted intuition is predominantly valued by the NJ types and secondarily the SP types in the Myers-Briggs naming system, and NE is primarily valued by the NP types and secondarily valued by the SJ types in the Myers-Briggs naming system. So this is the big video. Everyone's been waiting for this video. So this video is going to rely really heavily on the previous series that I did where I did deep dives into both of these cognitive functions. So I did 45-minute deep dives going into Carl Jung and Vanderhoop's writing, really parsing out the definitions of these two cognitive functions. So this video is going to rely really heavily on those. So I'll have those linked in the description if you're interested in those videos. As well as this is about these two functions in isolation. So no individual is these functions in isolation. You combine it with other functions and you, depending on where it is in your stack, you might water it down a little. So these descriptions are not going to describe any one individual, but it's just describing what these functions would be like in a vacuum. So in looking at Carl Jung and Vanderhoop's writing, there were words that came up over and over and over again, and I'm kind of calling these the anchor words. So for introverted intuition, the anchor word that came up many times was vision, and for NE, the anchor word that came up over and over again was the word possibilities, and specifically the word possibilities in the plural form, not just possibility. So when you look up the definition of vision, there's three definitions primarily that come up. It's the ability to think about or plan the future with imagination or wisdom. Another definition on Google is an experience of seeing someone or something in a dream or trance or as a supernatural apparition. Another one is a mental image of what the future will or could be like. Whereas for NE, it was possibilities. And so possibilities, when you come up with the word possibility, I feel like when you look up the definition of the word possibilities, it's not really articulating the thing, because you can only find the definition of the word possibility, which I feel like is kind of different than when you're talking about possibilities. So possibilities are unspecified qualities of a promising nature, potential, things that may be chosen or done out of several possible alternatives. Another word that came up in, I believe it was Carl Jung's writing, it was either Carl Jung or Vanderhoop, was this word imagination. And I feel like that's something that really is part of this possibilities. Because when we talk about possibilities, it's really this mental world of possibilities, which I think imagination is really tied into. So imagination is the faculty or action of forming new ideas or images or concepts of external objects not present to the senses. And one difference is going to come up over and over and over again is this singular versus plural. When you're looking at NI and NE, both kind of vision oriented, but a big difference is this singularity of vision versus this breadth of possibilities. So I wanted to do a metaphor of kind of what these cognitive functions are like. And actually I have 2 slides of metaphors in this particular case, but for NE possibilities, I just kind of closed my eyes, I was trying to think about it, and I think there's something very Disney about NE. So I said Disney represents the merry joy of life resulting from realizing possibilities that were once in the imagination. It expands in many directions, and its only constraints are those in your mind. Talking animals, music, and magic are examples of inventive ideation at work. The enthusiasm radiated from this fresh outlet is palpable. So there's a lot of words in here that came from Carl Jung's quotes. So this merry joy of life, that was a quote. Realizing possibilities, imagination was a word. Inventive and ideation are words that I associate with NE. Enthusiasm, radiating fresh outlets. So when I'm thinking about NE, there's really a sense of almost a childlike wonder with all these possibilities. And when you just look at all of these characters in this image, there are so many possibilities that have been realized, and there's no bounds to it. The talking animals and magic, and really wherever your imagination can take you. What is the Disney phrase? Your imagination can take you there? Is that the phrase? But anyways, I think there's something very NE about Disney. So when I was trying to do a metaphor, how do I relate NI to this? Because I really felt like NE needed to be this animation. So for NI, when I think of NI, it's really just a dark tunnel. So in previous videos, black hole was the metaphor that I used. And I think in this case, to make the parallelism, it's just this image. I was just thinking of kind of a dark tunnel winding toward the castle, in this case the Disney castle. This image represents floating down the river of the unconscious until an image flashes of insight. The river represents the future's clear outline of what will transpire in the final destination, the course of things. It is detached and seen from afar in a vague sense, and the image is taken in as a whole, no looking back. So I just thought that this represents kind of the singularity. I think for NI, there's such a singularity. It doesn't feel like there are multiple paths or multiple options. It feels like there's this one river, and you can go down no other rivers. You have this one clear outline, and there were quotes about seeing the clear outline of things, the course of things. It really feels like it's this linear, there's this one place that you can go, and it's the final destination. And it feels it's a hopeful viewing of a vision for the future. It's not looking down and seeing like, oh, it's a scary thing in the future, but it's a very optimistic vision of the future. And also what I liked about this picture is there's no looking back. Like you can't see what's behind them in this picture. They're not looking backward. And to get to the destination, NI doesn't say, well, this happened in the past, and this happened in the past, and this happened in the past, so I'll combine all these things together, therefore this will happen in the future. There's no looking back. It's just this vision's in your head of the path. You don't know how the vision got there, but there's this vision going forward of how things should be and how things are going to be, and you just got the vision. And it's very clear that there's just this one river you can take. It might be kind of vague. Maybe you're very far off for a ways. You can't even make out the castle if you're so far away. But it's just kind of this taking in as a whole. Not the finer details, but there's something kind of dark about it also, kind of this galaxy, this night sky. So I have this Disney version of the metaphor, but then I was also thinking that I noticed so many NE users being into anime. NE users in particular, I see a lot of interest in animation. It could be, I think I noticed maybe some more ESFJs with their NE third being into Disney and maybe like NE second being into anime, for example. That's really just a pattern I've noticed. It's obviously not 100% true all the time. But so I wanted to do a Studio Ghibli version of this. And so I think like when you look at all those NE possibilities, I mean, you just think of like the cat bus and Totoro and Kiki on her broom, and there's just all of these possibilities, all these directions that you could go. And I feel like that really represents NE with the breadth of all the possibilities. And then you have this NI version, and I just feel like it's this dark tunnel. I've talked about so many times. I think it's like, it doesn't feel like you have options. It doesn't feel like there are lots of tunnels you can take. It feels like you got plopped in this one tunnel, and this is the clear outline for the future, and there's no turning back, but it's hopeful future. Okay, so now I want to get into the side-by-side contrasting. So I wanted to do one that's kind of talking about the root of these words, introverted intuition, extroverted intuition. So the introverted functions, it's turning inward and watching over what's happening inwardly. So kind of a way that I describe this, like an internal processing of, and in this case it's intuition, and it's like a vision. So introverted intuition is an internal processing of the meaning of the vision or the meaning of the course of things, or there are quotes from Carl Jung about the deeper purpose, really going inward and analyzing the vision, and valuing depth over breadth, which is a difference here with NE. So NE, it's extroverted intuition, and extroverted means to kind of watch over, like to turn outward and watch over what's happening externally. And so a lot of the extrovert functions is an external application of, or an external realization of, or an external amplification of. So in this case, I'm calling it an external application of possibilities. So there's all these different options we can go, and wanting to bring those to life, externally. NI, this is a quote, feels profoundly connected to deeper purpose. NE seeks to encompass greatest possibilities. So these are both direct quotes. With NI, you get a lot of conversation about, what are you excited about in the next year? Or what do you feel like is the meaning of this year for you? Or what's your word for the year? Or, your vision for the year? Your conversation will, kind of spiral around these type of things and talking about where's your future going this year. And I think with NE, you get a lot more like, oh, well, it could be this, and it could go like this, and it could go like this, and it could go like this. And so I think with NI, you get a lot more of this tunnel vision that's like, it is going to go like this. And with NE, it's a lot more like, well, there's going to be lots of possibilities. It could be, this is a possibility, and this is a possibility, and this is a possibility. And, who's to say? I just want to, experience the greatest possibilities, kind of wherever the wind blows me. And it's kind of a difference in that regard. And so I think one difference between the two types is because NI feels that it's got this one tunnel that it can go down, a lot of times you see a lot less breadth with hobbies or careers, for example. They kind of feel like this is the one way that they're supposed to go, and really not straying from that. It's kind of this building, the clear outline. This will build to this, which will build to this, which will build to this, and this is where we're going. And it doesn't feel like you can just, like, I think with NI, it doesn't feel like you want to explore tons of different hobbies or tons of different careers. It feels like you have the one right thing. And it feels almost wrong to step away from that thing that you feel like is in the trajectory of that alignment, which I think would feel limiting to NE users. So with NE users, I see a lot more breadth of possibilities with hobbies and with careers. So, I've said it in other videos, but, they try out roller skating for a little bit, and then they try out bullet journaling for a little bit, and surfing, and then they try out skateboarding, and then they try out bullet journaling, or, really willing to, like, try new things and hop around for different hobbies. And they do that, they get into that hobby for a couple months, and then they want to try another possibility, and they do that for a couple months. So you definitely see a lot more breadth with NE users, I think, with types of experiences. I think NI is a lot more trying to get deep into the one type of experience. Now you have a very different impression personality-wise with these two functions. So quotes from NI: extraordinary aloofness, detached, cold. NE is merry and full of the joy of life. So this is extremely apparent when you look at NI DOMs and NE DOMs, so INJs and ENPs. It becomes a little more difficult to tell when you've got like a ENJ versus an INP. It's kind of watering down this a little bit because you're not just any one function. In addition to having NI, maybe you have FE, and FE is quite sociable and very kind and harmonious. So, you get kind of a melding of the two functions. But in isolation, this is what they're like. NI says they'll resist with great stubbornness that which doesn't align. They're determined. There's a sense of obstinacy. NE has a desire for novelty, and that makes them extremely changeable. So this is something that's so different between the two functions. NI, it feels like they've got this one river that they can go down. And so if someone says, oh, well, why don't you hop over here? It's like, well, that's not on the river, so I don't really want to, I don't really want to do that. So there is a sense of an obstinacy that doesn't want to go along, if it doesn't align with the vision. It feels, there's such a, you feel bound to the vision. You feel like you have to stay on this river. And it just feels wrong to get off of it. It's like, well, I'm in this boat and I don't want to get up on land and walk the boat, and that, obviously the castle's over here. The castle's obviously over here. So I need to just stay on this river. So there's a stubbornness. There were quotes about some egotism. NE, they have this desire for novelty, and so that makes them really changeable. So NE doesn't have this obstinacy. It's like, oh yeah, let's do this. Oh, another possibility, let's do this. So extremely changeable. Their lives are typically marked by change. Change in geographic location, change in jobs, change in hobbies, change in relationships sometimes. And so there's a lot of NE that's like, it's not tied down. It's not super tied down to any particular thing. Whereas NI, it's very tied down to what the path is and the clear outline. NI feels bound to transform his vision into his own life. That's a quote. NE feels bound to the next possibility. The whole being goes out into it. So I thought it was so interesting that this word bound was used in both of them and what they feel bound to. So NI feels bound to transform the vision into real life. So we see this river, we see this castle, this is where things are going, and they feel bound to transform it into their own life. And one thing I hear NI users talk about is kind of this dark tunnel or some variation of this. And with NE users, when they describe their mind, it's a lot more likely that they're going to describe their mind like a library. It's this huge library and all these books, the books could represent memories, the books could represent ideas, and they just have all these books that they could go and they could pull from. Whereas NI, it doesn't feel like there are tons of options. It doesn't feel like you're in a library with all these options of memories and ideas to pull from. It feels like we're not looking at memories. There's no looking back. We're only looking forward, and it's kind of this vague version of the castle. In general, sort of what the castle could be. But the path seems very clear, The tunnel seems clear, and that there's like a vague understanding of the castle in front of you. NI moves from image to image in the womb of the unconscious. NE moves from possibility to possibility, scenting out the new. NI foresees possibilities in a clear outline, and one of the words that was used was prevision. NE says imagination continually suggests fresh possibilities. So yes, something to emphasize, these both have the word possibilities in them, but there's a difference in this word possibilities. So the possibilities for NI, it's like this clear outline. It's this tunnel, this river we're going down, the possibilities are in a clear outline. And for NE, it's just these fresh possibilities. There's never an emphasis in NE with a linear nature. And I think that's something that you see in conversation. It's a very different conversation nature. I think with NI users, with NI and NE, there's kind of a push-pull relationship in conversations because they're both talking about intuitive things and ideas. So there's kind of a synergy that happens. But I think with NI, they're like, okay, let's talk about this topic and let's stay on it and get deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper until we get to that castle or whatever, until we get to the final insight of this thing. And when I've talked with NI users, staying on one topic, getting to the depth of something for hours. And I think that there are other functions that are similar to this too, but NE is a lot more tangential. Oh, that makes me think of this. Do you think that has something to do with it? And then NI is kind of like, well, wait. Let's stay on the outline here. Let's stay here. And NE's like, well, but this is so interesting. That reminded me of this thing. Let's talk about this. And I think with NE, you get a lot more in the communication style. You get like tangents on tangents on tangents on tangents. And it's like, this reminds me of this, reminds me of this. And it's more like a web as opposed to an outline that they want to go down and really exploring, this topic of conversation is, pinging lots of things for them. Whereas then it's like shutting out all other possibilities to go down this clear outline. It's like an intentional, like wanting to put blinders on so you can get deeper and deeper and deeper. So NI perceives meaning and connections in the internal world. So it's this, this linear of connections. And NE sees the external world as a series of connections. So I think that's just another example of, a web of connections. So I think for NE, I've asked NE users before to tell me what their thought process is like. I've had one NE user, like they say, like if they're driving, for example, they might think to themselves, oh, I wonder who lives there and what their life must be like. And they're kind of wondering about that. And that's just an example of one external connection or something that they're wondering about. NI has one vague direction to go and resists all others. NE seeks to expand abilities in many directions. NI is searching out new angles for viewing and understanding life. NE is searching out emerging possibilities and enterprises. So yeah, like I said, NI is a huge difference is this depth versus breadth, or this singularity versus many things. And so for NI, it's looking at, okay, from my life purpose, for example, say we're talking about that. How many different ways can I view? I want to just view this thing. I want to understand it more and more and more and more. Whereas NE is really good at searching out emerging possibilities and enterprises. Like when people are really talking about Bitcoin or cryptocurrency, I saw a lot of NE users hopping on that, or when podcasts were brand new, people hopping on that, or when there's a new social media platform like TikTok, for example, NE users are the first to jump on that. I've got a friend who does sales for ChatGPT. He's an ENTP. So they're like one of the first ones to hop on these new emerging enterprises with a lot of breadth. I mean, over the course of an NE user's lifetime, how many things have they been so quick to hop on? So I took from the previous series with Carl Jung and Vanderhoop's words, I took words that I saw in the text and I put them here, or synonyms for those words. And so you see there's kind of a difference here. The vibe is a little different. So yeah, I think one difference with NI and NE, when you look at these words, NI is a lot more low-key. You get a lot more like sensory deprivation, meaning, purpose, floating head, understanding. These words are a lot more, they're kind of aloof words, indefinite, generalities. There's kind of this toned down, aloof nature. With NE, you get more words like creative impulse and imagination and possibilities and connections and expectant. And, it already is sounding more exciting and more lively on the NE side, whereas NI is kind of toned down. It's like a fog, like someone wiped a fog all over, like a vapor all over NI. It's a vague, aloof, ephemeral type nature. And with NE, it's very like initiating, it's creative, it's changeable, it's brainstorming, inventive, and it's really, initiating and hopping on the thing. So if you're interested in my deep dives about NI and NE, I will have those linked in the description, as well as I have personality playlists about each of the types. So if you're an INFP and you want to know all the videos that I've made that could relate to you, I'll have that playlist linked below. So yeah, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.